Some opening shot thoughts. Mayor Johnson, the education mayor, is having some trouble corralling the Chicago public schools to go along with his vision. And before I go forward, how about a quick recap? The mayor's handpicked school board resigns en masse after resisting pressure from the mayor's office and the Power Chicago Teachers Union to approve a controversial loan and a pension payment. The mayor appoints a brand new board, and then the new board president you see there, he resigns after a week. And then the replacement tries to get a taxpayer-funded car and driver, but is denied. They approved the budget without the borrowing and the pension payment anyway. Then Pedro Martinez leaves after 6 months. The mayor's handpicked replacement takes over and presents a budget, get this, without the borrowing and without the pension payment. So essentially, the mayor and CPS find themselves right back where they started at the very beginning of this unfortunate chapter, in a stalemate. Now, yesterday I asked Mayor Johnson about the elephant in the room. On the loan, the former CEO resisted it. Your former board resisted it. According to sources, the current CEO is resisting it. Isn't that a sign that they believe this loan could threaten the future of public education if CPS goes more into debt?
Yeah, the threat to public education is if we don't get the $1.6 billion from the state of Illinois. That's the real threat.
Apparently, he doesn't think more debt is a threat. Now, sources inside CPS and City Hall tell me the gulf is widening once again. There are threats going on right now of lost funding being lobbed around and lots of rattled nerves on both sides. So what exactly is it about this loan and about this pension payment that has caused so much chaos at our school system here in Chicago? That deserves a much deeper investigation. And we'll have much more on today's budget plans in just a moment.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Chicago Public Schools plan to close a $734 million budget deficit ruffles feathers at the mayor's office. We tell you why. Democrats gather to make their pitches during Governor's Day at the Illinois State Fair. And if the Bears move the political football on getting a deal in Springfield.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Welcome to Paris on Politics. Well, it's a crowded field of Illinois Democrats vying for several open congressional seats in 2026, and that made for some moving and shaking on Governor's Day as Senate candidates made their pitch in Springfield at the Illinois State Fair. Each Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate took turns making their case at the annual rally at the State Fair.
What kind of a government do we want? Do we want one that's there for those fighting to make it? Or one that's there for those who have it made?
I ask you, please don't grow weary. That's what they want you to do. They want you to get lost in the chaos. But we don't have time for anyone to be on the sidelines.
When they tell us to sit down, stand up. When they tell us to be quiet, speak out. And when they tell us it can't be done, tell them, just watch us.
Meanwhile, Governor Pritzker, who has not ruled out a run for president in 2028, addressed the post-election dissection of his party.
The pity party, the circular firing squad, the think tank brainstorming sessions, they just need to be over.
Meanwhile, on the GOP side, former Illinois Republican Chairman Don Tracy announces his candidacy for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate. Republicans have their day at the rally in Springfield tomorrow, or the State Fair, and we will bring you coverage of that. But back up here, the Bears Stadium saga drags on. We're more than 2 years into the Kevin Warren era as president of the franchise, and dirt has yet to move in Arlington Heights or elsewhere. On Friday, Warren said that will change before the end of the year if Springfield helps him out with, quote, property tax certainty. So joining me to discuss this is Illinois State Representative Cam Buckner, a Democrat from Chicago, and Mark Gannis, co-founder of Sports Corp Limited and an expert on all things sports business and sports stadium related. Thank you both for joining me. Cam Buckner, you made no secret about the fact you don't like this bill the Bears are asking for, but will it have the votes to go in the veto session?
I don't believe so. I don't think that the Bears have done the legwork to be able to get the requisite number of votes in the House or the Senate. People have the same concerns that I've voiced publicly. And one of those concerns is that there are people across the state of Illinois who want property tax relief for their homes, for their families, but they don't get to cut to the front of the line like the Bears have insinuated they are trying to do. And so I think there are more conversations that need to be had, and hopefully we can have those conversations in public.
All right, Mark Gannis, the Bears ask in Springfield, is this something that lawmakers should go along with? Property tax certainty, essentially getting them to sort of negotiate their property tax levels with the town.
Yeah, you know, what the Bears have put on the table is actually an extraordinarily favorable deal for the state of Illinois, for Cook County, frankly, even for the city of Chicago. They will pay for the entirety of the $4 billion or so stadium. They've already paid for the land. As I understand it, they will pay more property tax than the old Arlington Heights racetrack has paid over the years. And so, you know, this is really a one-sided deal in favor of the state, in favor of the county, and in many ways in favor for the city, because the city doesn't have to put up any money, but will get a lot of the economic value associated with the new Dome Stadium in the Chicago market. That having been said, Cam's not wrong about that. You have to come and make the case. That really is one of the important things that needs to be done here. You need to go down to Springfield. You need to show your face. This is not unusual. This is a very good story the Bears have to tell. They need to go down there. George McCaskey, Kevin Warren, their team need to go down there and need to state the case publicly. They have an excellent story to tell. By comparison with other stadiums around the country, this is one of the best deals the public sector will have received anywhere in the country.
All right, but Representative Buckner, we just heard you explain why you don't think it's one of those good deals. So if Chairman McCaskey comes down there, what do you think you want to hear from him that might change your mind?
Well, I'll say this. First off, in the last 40 seconds, Mark Gannis just messaged this better than the Bears have in the last 3 years. They have had a hard time telling this story, which is part of the problem. Now, while there are some parts of what Mark said that I don't agree with, including the fact that, you know, I don't know if it's a good deal for Chicago, because Chicago is still left holding the bag on $400 million of an old Soldier Field renovation. The state property tax has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just disappear. So does that mean you tax folks more in Arlington Heights on something else? Does that mean that the state comes in to rescue Arlington Heights if the property tax levies aren't what they're supposed to be? There's some questions there. But yes, I think this requires, obviously Kevin Warren has had some conversations with the legislature, but also, once again, George McCaskey, the owner of this team. And in some of my conversations, I've reminded folks that, you know, last year, Jerry Reinsdorf found his way in his busy schedule to come down to Springfield to have a conversation. That's what we want. We want to hear from them, and we want to hear what their plan is. And if they can frame it the way that Mark framed it, maybe they'll find some people who can convert to their side.
All right. Well, if George McCaskey's listening, maybe he wants to put you on retainer here, Mark. But, you know, I mean, the argument Cam made in the Tribune is that if you're going to cut a deal on property taxes, the money's got to come from somewhere. And it means schools might not have the same level of property tax money that they would have, or other forms of government?
Well, it really is not the case. The land, Arlington Heights, Arlington Racetrack, paid property taxes for many years. So as I understand it, what the Bears would be paying is significantly higher than what Arlington Racetrack had paid for all its many years of operation. Second, as it relates to stadiums, stadiums really don't add any school children to the enrollments of local schools. They're there for the public assembly activities, not for people. People don't live in the stadiums. You don't have families living in the stadiums. So that doesn't add to it. But there are other factors, and Cam is right. They need to be brought forward. There needs to be a full discussion about the kind of infrastructure that would be needed from the state, how that would benefit the entire region and not just the Bears project out there, how it would help the development of the area, how it would help the other residents of the area, how it helps Cook County, how the stadium out in Arlington Heights can be a benefit to the city of Chicago. You know, they're talking about building a domed stadium that's going to have major national and international events. I assure you, the people coming in for those events are not going to be staying in Arlington Heights. They're going to be staying in downtown Chicago. The attraction, the appeal is Chicago, the hotels, the restaurants, the culture. And so they need to make that case and present it to Cam and his colleagues so that they can understand and hear how beneficial this all is to the state, to the county, and to the city.
And even if they make that case, Representative Buckner, you know, by the veto session where they're going to need 3/5 majority to pass. I mean, it becomes much harder to pass a bill in the fall. You've got other things on your agenda. You've got a transit bill. You've got CPS, which we're going to hear from in a bit, asking for billions more. Are you going to have time to listen to the bears?
Well, that's part of this conversation, right? I think it's very tough for any politician, especially during an upcoming election year, to have a conversation about cutting taxes for a professional sports franchise that is, by the way, worth $8.8 billion when we've got to fund transit to the tune of $1.5 billion, where CPS says that they need $2 billion, where we are still waiting to see what happens in Washington with the Trump administration and if we have to make any tweaks to the budget, right? These are things that are super important to the people of Illinois. And so in order to frame this, we need to hear from them why this is so important to happen right now. I'll also say, I know that stadiums are not where kids go to school, but the Bears have said that this is going to be an economic boon for the entire area because this is an entertainment district. They're talking about hotels and restaurants and things that will add more stress on police, fire, libraries in the Arlington Heights area. That money will have to come from somewhere. This is not magic math. We got to figure out what the real numbers are.
Mark Gannis, you know, looking back, as I mentioned, Kevin Warren's been on the job for 2 years, and I went on the Score Sports Radio this afternoon saying, you know, based on my reporting over this, there have been clearly some missteps here. Do you agree with that? That perhaps this could have been handled in a different way, and the Bears could have that stadium well underway at this point?
You know, Kevin made the judgment to give the city of Chicago and Mayor Johnson a full opportunity, full good faith opportunity to be able to put together a deal that would keep the team in a new stadium within the city of Chicago. Didn't materialize. Now, the argument I would make is I would have asked for something in exchange for that good faith opportunity had I been in Kevin's shoes. I would have said, listen, Mayor, we're going to be working with you. We're going to spend the time and the money and the extra cost of not doing construction for 2 years. And that's a big cost these days. But if you can't deliver to us a stadium deal that is reasonable, we'll pay for the whole building, but you help us get the rest of it done, then you have to be supportive of us going to our second option. I would have asked for that at the front end. I think Kevin should have also. That would be a misstep in my view.
And it seems like just like several years ago or decades ago with the renovation of Soldier Field, both sides kind of dropped the ball here a little bit. But at the end of the day, there will be some kind of deal. We know that. And Mark Gannis, State Representative Cam Buckner, thank you both for being here. We now know how CPS leaders plan to close a $734 million budget deficit for the coming year. They gave their presentation before the Chicago Board of Education today, and it was notable for what wasn't in it.
We have not included adding to our $9 billion debt burden as a strategy to close the FY26 budget gap.
CPS Budget Director Mike Sitkowski says a proposed $200 million borrowing scheme could be the death knell for the school district's long-term finances.
Borrowing for operating expenses would send the district into a downward spiral of credit downgrades, higher interest rates, and steeper cuts to staff, program, and services in the future.
Today, Sitkowski and new CEO Macquillan King's leadership team unveiled their 2026 budget to the Board of Education. They say they'll close the budget gap without the borrowing and by pushing a $175 million employee pension payment onto the city. That is, unless the city or the state come through with additional funding to cover it. The plan was met with skepticism from board member Makilla Blaze, who was appointed by Mayor Johnson.
We have to work with folks. We have to be good partners. We have to collaborate. And if we're going to act like we don't care about the city budget, why should they care about ours?
The budget plan is the exact approach that former CEO Pedro Martinez took before he was fired for refusing the short-term high-interest loan pushed by both the mayor and the Chicago Teachers Union. Some parents' groups offered praise to CPS leaders today for pushing back on those plans.
Thank you, Dr. King, for making the decision to protect classrooms by rejecting the $175 million MEABF payment and avoiding new high-interest debt. This decision shows a real commitment to putting families first. even in the face of intense pressure.
CPS leaders say they'll close the gap through TIF money, debt restructuring, and cuts outside of the classroom. And some more specifics on that. It's $126 million in non-classroom cuts they're proposing, some one-time funding sources, and debt refinancing. And joining us with some reaction is Joe Ferguson, president of the Civic Federation, along with board members Debbie Pope and Jennifer Custer. Thank you all for being here. I'll start with you, board member Pope. Some controversial elements here, pushing off that pension payment and no to some of that borrowing. Is this a budget you can vote yes on?
No, I'm not comfortable with not fulfilling a promise that had been made and not fulfilled last year to the city. And part of why I'm not comfortable with it is the 28 alders signed a letter to us after we did not pay that money last year saying we gave you the excess TIF, the maximum TIF that we've ever given, and we gave it to you with this expectation. And you can't count on us doing this for you if you are not going to do your part to pay the MEABF. The majority of MEABF payments go to people who are annuitants, who worked for CPS, and I do believe that it is our obligation to assist in covering their pensions, and I do believe that there is a way to do that and to avoid any cuts to the classroom and to avoid the threat of mid-year cuts if we don't get the TIF money. Okay, and MEBF, that is the pension payment. Jennifer Custer, what about that? This should be the CPS's responsibility.
Say that again.
Should that be the CPS's responsibility?
The MEABF payment?
Right.
You know, by law, it's not. So the law states that it's not our payment to make. And I will say that, you know, last year we were granted $300 million in TIF, or roughly $300 million in TIF. But the difference is we didn't actually sign an IGA. That IGA was pulled from our agenda back in March, and we never agreed upon it. So it's hard for alders to say, well, we gave you this in lieu of, you know, with promises of this, because we didn't actually ever vote to agree on that at all. Hence why we didn't make the MEABF payment. So I think no, it's not really our responsibility. We didn't promise anything. We didn't agree to an IGA, and we didn't even get the opportunity to voice our votes on that budget amendment last year, but we will get the opportunity to do so this year. And I think that this is a budget that is presented that protects kids, protects families, protects communities, and protects schools.
Joe Ferguson, does it make a difference whether the city taxpayers pay that $175 million or CPS taxpayers, which are one and the same? They're just different bodies here, or is it just sort of moving around shells?
It's the same taxpayer base. It's the same taxpayers. It's the same money. And what we're talking about here are institutional politics. And at core, the legal responsibility under state law dating back to 1921 is for the city. What's being raised here is fairness and equity issues, but fairness and equity issues at this moment run into math. And the math is that CPS doesn't have this money. And the only way to come up with this money is either to cut classroom program or to borrow. And if they borrow, we head down a path in which the credit rating agencies for a governmental body that already is in junk status heads down further, and there is a set of chain consequences that not only are bad for CPS, but that are bad for the city of Chicago as a government as well.
All right, but Board Member Pope, you said that you do believe there's a way to make this payment for CPS and not cut anything into the classroom and hurt kids in any way.
Let me say, I am a retired educator. I taught at neighborhood schools that were drastically underfunded. I am not willing to consider cuts, even mid-year cuts. And one of the problems with relying on this TIF money, if we don't pay the MEABF, is that if we don't get that TIF money, then we don't have another source, and we're faced with either furloughs, mid-year cuts, or some combination that I think is unfair to our children, particularly our children who are most disadvantaged.
Are you saying, though, that you're not going to get TIF money then? What are you saying?
I'm saying that we are not guaranteed to get the record TIF amount that we got in this past year if we do not fulfill what the city has expected of us and what these 28 alders indicated that they were very unhappy that they didn't get last year. I'm talking political reality.
Political reality. Well, let me ask you this, though. Is there a way to fund this without, would you advocate for borrowing then to maybe meet these costs?
Well, in an ideal world, I would say that the state should step up, give us fully funded mandated categoricals, consider some other sources of progressive revenue. President Trump just gave back a lot of money to the ultra-rich in Chicago. Maybe some of that money could be taxed by the state. That's my overall philosophy. In terms of short term, we may have to borrow, but I think that a large part of what we should do is go together as a board, as educators, with community organizations, hopefully with other organizations, to Springfield and say, we have funded at 73%. This is unsustainable, and it's not fair to our children.
At the same time, the funding bill, it calls for full funding by 2027. But Jennifer Custer, do you believe that there's $1.6 billion that should be coming to CPS from the state, as the mayor has said and as CTU has said?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that CPS is underfunded by the EBF formula, but every district in the state is underfunded then by that same formula. So I would actually ask the question, are there other school districts around the state that have signed on to the same campaign that we are campaigning for? Because I have not seen anything in the media saying other school districts are going down to do, any of these same things and taking up this fight. Yeah, we need more money to fund our schools, absolutely. Can it get here in time to close this budget? I highly doubt that. So, we need to really think about what we can do right now to get this budget across the finish line that's going to have minimal impact to our children in the classroom. And, we are, if the mayor is going to declare a TIF surplus, we are entitled to that money from that surplus based on the percentage of our taxing body. So no alderman, no mayor can withhold that money from us. As soon as that is declared, that money is coming to us, no matter what. And I think that if, Mayor Johnson would have made a commitment to us prior to this, we may not have been in this situation either.
And in fact, we've heard, I've heard sources from CPS saying that the mayor's office indeed is saying, perhaps we don't give you TIF surplus now because you're not handling your own finances.
That's theatrics. The reality is that the city itself is facing a $1.2 billion deficit. It needs a TIF sweep as much as other units of government that are taxing authorities. The money goes to CPS automatically if the city declares a TIF surplus and sweep for itself. Anything else that's being said borders on being extortionate. That is not what we should be doing at a moment when the obligation really is to stabilize the situation, stabilize the classrooms for the start of the year, and restart the clock for the bigger conversations that need to occur. The state does not owe CPS $1.6 billion. If that money was to be paid, the state actually has to come up with a lot more money because there is, under the law, no way to give money to one school district without giving it proportionately to all the other school districts. So we're talking billions of dollars for a state government that itself has fiscal cliffs to deal with in real time, including for things like transit reform.
All right, we have a few seconds left. Board Member Pope, should other school districts get more money then if CPS is going to get one?
Absolutely. Many school districts throughout the state are struggling, and I think it's the state's responsibility to step up and help everyone from Peoria to East St. Louis and back.
And very quickly on that, it took years to build this formula. It would take years to change that formula, and it would take a long time to come up with the money that would be needed, billions of dollars, that the state doesn't have.